My sister dumped her kids on me every afternoon while she went to explore herself, saying, "You have no excuse not to help." My parents agreed, calling me ungrateful when I refused. So I moved out and stopped paying their bills. A month later, they called, furious because I never thought the people closest to me would take advantage of me so badly that I'd have no choice but to walk away. But that's exactly what happened. And when I finally stood up for myself, let's just say, they never saw it coming. I'm 28, male, and for the last few years, I've been living with my parents. It wasn't because I was struggling. I had a solid job in IT, worked remotely, and made good money. But my parents had been going through some financial troubles, and since I wasn't in a rush to get my own place, I stayed to help. I paid rent, covered groceries, and even took care of a good chunk of their mortgage. They never had to ask. I just did it because, well, they're my parents. It was the right thing to do. My older sister, Rachel, 32, had never been expected to do the same. She was the golden child. The one who could do no wrong, no matter what she did. Growing up, I was always labeled as lazy because I liked video games, but Rachel was independent and strong-willed, even though she made one bad decision after another. She had 2 kids, Jake, 7, and Sophie, 4. I liked my niece and nephew, but I had no interest in being a babysitter. I never had. That didn't seem to matter to Rachel. It started small. She'd ask me to watch them for just a little while so she could run an errand. I didn't mind at first. I figured, fine, no big deal. But then a little while turned into hours. Then it became a regular thing. At first, she'd at least text and ask. Then she started texting after she had already left them with me. Then she stopped asking altogether. One day, I was in the middle of work, literally on a Zoom call, when my doorbell rang. I ignored it at first, thinking whoever it was would go away. Then I got a text. "Kids are at the door. Be back in a few hours." I was stunned. By the time I got to the door, Jake and Sophie were standing there, and Rachel was already driving away. She didn't even wait to see if I was home. She just dropped them off and left. I was furious. After that, I told her straight up, I wasn't watching her kids anymore. I had a job. I had responsibilities. I wasn't just sitting around doing nothing all day. She rolled her eyes and waved me off like I was being dramatic. "You work from home. What's the big deal?" The big deal was that I was working. I wasn't just sitting around waiting for her to drop off her kids, but she didn't care. The next day, she did it again. And the next, she'd just drop them off and leave before I could argue. I called my parents, expecting them to back me up. Instead, they took her side. "Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" My mom said. "She needs help. You're home anyway." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I'm not free daycare," I shot back. "If she needs a babysitter, she can hire one." And that's when my mom really lost it. "After everything we've done for you," she snapped, "you're going to be this ungrateful? Everything they'd done for me? I was paying their bills, their mortgage, their groceries, their utilities. I wasn't just covering my share, I was covering theirs too. They couldn't afford their own home without my help, and they had the nerve to call me ungrateful?" I was done. That night, I started looking for apartments. Within a week, I had signed a lease, packed my things, and moved out. I didn't tell them where I was going. I didn't give them a key. And most importantly, I stopped paying their bills. No more mortgage payments, no more groceries, no more utilities. They were on their own. At first, they acted like it didn't matter. "We'll be fine," my dad said dismissively. Rachel didn't care either. They assumed I'd come crawling back eventually. Then about a month later, I got a furious call from my mom. "Why did the internet get shut off?" I calmly reminded her that I wasn't paying for it anymore. She screeched. "How could you do this to us?" I thought cutting them off would be the end of it, that they'd finally realize how much I had been doing for them. That maybe, just maybe, they'd take responsibility for their own mess. I was wrong. After my mom's screaming fit about the internet getting shut off, I didn't hear from them for a few days. I figured they were scrambling to figure things out. Then Rachel called. "Mom and Dad said you just abandoned them," she started. "You didn't even warn them?" I laughed. "I told them weeks ago I wasn't paying anymore. Not my fault they ignored me." "Yeah. Well, now they're behind on everything. They're saying they might lose the house." I stayed quiet. "You need to fix this," she continued. Like it was my responsibility. Like I had forced them to rely on me. I took a deep breath. "Not my problem, Rachel." That's when she snapped. "You're such a selfish little sh." I hung up. A few days later, I started getting random calls from unknown numbers. I ignored them at first, but then I got a text. "We know where you live now." I felt my stomach drop. Turns out, my parents had gone full crazy mode and somehow found my new address. My best guess? They checked the billing info on something I had forgotten to update. Next thing I know, they're banging on my door. I open it to find my mom standing there, arms crossed, while my dad looks around like he's inspecting the place. "This is where you've been hiding?" My mom scoffed. I clenched my jaw. "I'm not hiding." "What do you want?" "You need to come home," I laughed. "Not happening. We're about to lose everything," she snapped. You owe us. That word? Oh. Like the years of paying their bills meant nothing. Like the thousands of dollars I had poured into keeping their house running didn't count. I stepped back. You should go. You're just going to let your family suffer? My dad finally spoke. You'd really let us lose the house? I shrugged. Not my problem. Mom's face twisted in rage. Fine. But if you won't help us, you'll regret it. That's when I knew this wasn't over, and I was right. A week later, I came home from work to find Rachel and the kids waiting outside my apartment. Hey, she said, all fake cheerful. The kids missed you. I blinked. What are you doing here? She smiled wider. Oh, I just need a quick favor. No. Absolutely not. Look, I don't, but before I could finish, she walked away. She actually left the kids on my doorstep and drove off. I stood there, dumbfounded, while Jake and Sophie looked up at me, completely oblivious. I pulled out my phone and called her. Straight to voicemail. That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I took a deep breath, then crouched down in front of the kids. Hey, guys. Change of plans. We're going on a little trip. I grabbed their hands, walked them downstairs, and took them straight to Rachel's workplace. She worked at a local department store as an assistant manager. When we got there, I marched the kids inside and found her at the customer service desk. She looked up, startled. I smiled. Your problem now. And I walked out. 15 minutes later, I got a text. You're dead to me. Perfect. But I knew my family. This wasn't over yet. I knew Rachel wouldn't let this go, but I didn't expect her to go this far. A few days after I dumped the kids at her workplace, I started noticing weird things happening. Small things, at first. My mailbox was suddenly stuffed with junk mail. Catalogs, random magazines, even pamphlets for parenting classes. Then my email started getting spammed with weird subscriptions I hadn't signed up for, newsletters, spammy websites, and even job applications for daycare centers. It didn't take a genius to figure out who was behind it. I ignored it at first. Let them play their little games. But then? It escalated. One night, I came home from getting groceries and noticed something off about my front door. The lock looked scratched, like someone had tried to force it open. I felt my stomach twist. I checked my security camera, and sure enough, Rachel had been there. She had tried to get into my apartment while I was gone. I immediately called her. What the hell were you doing at my place? I demanded. Rachel didn't even try to deny it. Mom wanted to talk to you. I felt my eye twitch. So you try to break into my apartment? Relax. I was just checking if you were home. You mean breaking and entering? It's not a big deal. Stop being dramatic, she scoffed. You've been ignoring everyone, so we had to get your attention somehow. My blood was boiling. Stay the hell away from my place. I hung up and called the building management. They confirmed that someone had tried to pick my lock but hadn't succeeded. I filed a report with the security team, just in case. Then? I changed my locks. But the real twist? That wasn't the worst of it. 2 days later, I got a call from HR at work. Hey, we got an interesting email about you, my manager said carefully. My heart sank. What kind of email? Someone claiming to be a concerned parent said you were running an unlicensed daycare from your apartment. I nearly dropped my phone. They sent multiple complaints, my manager continued. Said you were neglecting kids, leaving them unsupervised, that you even abandoned them at a store. I felt the rage building in my chest. Rachel had actually tried to sabotage my job. I took a deep breath. You don't believe this, right? Of course not, my manager reassured me. But we have to investigate, just to cover our bases. I was livid. They weren't just being petty anymore. They were actively trying to ruin my life. I knew I couldn't let this slide. So I decided it was time for real revenge. And trust me, they never saw it coming. I was beyond done. They had crossed every line. Breaking into my apartment? Trying to get me fired? They wanted a war? Fine. But I wasn't going to play dirty. I was going to play smart. The first thing I did? Lawyer up. I explained everything to an attorney, how Rachel had dumped her kids on me, how my parents had called me ungrateful when I refused to be free childcare, how Rachel had tried to break into my apartment, and now, how she had sent false complaints to my job. My lawyer's eyes went wide. You have enough here for a harassment case, he said. Especially with them trying to mess with your employment. Perfect. While my lawyer handled that, I focused on something else, the financial mess they had gotten themselves into. Remember how I had been paying their bills? Well, without me, they were drowning. Their mortgage was past due, their utilities were shutting off one by one, and creditors were calling. And now, they had no one to bail them out. I found out from a mutual acquaintance that my parents were panicking. My dad had started selling furniture to make ends meet. My mom had even tried asking their church for donations. Rachel wasn't doing much better. Apparently, her gym membership got canceled when her credit card was declined. Rachel tried to borrow money from friends, but no one wanted to help. And because she had started gossiping about me, a lot of people in their social circle were avoiding her. I should have felt bad, but I didn't. They did this to themselves. Then? Justice finally hit them. First, my lawyer sent a cease and desist letter to Rachel, warning her that if she kept harassing me, we'd take her to court. She ignored it. So we sued. Defamation and harassment. Rachel tried to act like she was innocent, but the evidence was against her. My lawyer had all the emails and texts she sent to my job, security footage of her trying to break in, and witnesses confirming she had abandoned her kids at my apartment. The judge wasn't impressed. Rachel lost. She was ordered to pay damages, and when she couldn't, her wages were garnished. But the best part? CPS got involved. Since Rachel had repeatedly dumped her kids on me without consent, CPS started an investigation into whether she was providing a stable home. And let's just say, she was not. Turns out, Rachel had maxed out her credit cards. She was 3 months behind on rent. And after the lawsuit, she couldn't afford groceries. Her kid's father, who had barely been in the picture, had to step in. He took Jake and Sophie away from her while she got back on her feet. But the worst punishment? Rachel lost her job. The department store found out about the lawsuit and decided she was too much of a liability. Fired. No severance. Nothing. Rachel, unable to keep up with her crumbling life, moved back in with our parents. And my parents? Well, they lost the house. I heard through the grapevine that they tried begging family members for help, but no one wanted to get involved. They had burned too many bridges. Last I heard, they were renting a tiny apartment in a bad part of town, barely scraping by. And me? I'm thriving. I got a promotion at work, upgraded to a better apartment, and cut them all out of my life for good. They tried to destroy me. Instead, they destroyed themselves. Justice served. But that wasn't the end of my story. About 6 months after the lawsuit, I was grocery shopping when I ran into Jake and Sophie with their dad, Mark. I hadn't seen the kids since that day at the department store, and part of me had been worried about them. Despite everything, they were innocent in all of this. The kids recognized me immediately. "Uncle!" Sophie shrieked, running toward me and wrapping her tiny arms around my legs. Jake was more reserved, giving me a small wave. Mark looked uncomfortable but approached me anyway. "Hey," he said awkwardly. I heard about everything that happened." I nodded stiffly. "Yeah, it was a mess." "Look," Mark continued, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "I know Rachel and your parents were way out of line. I just wanted to say, thanks for looking out for the kids when you did. And I'm sorry about the way they treated you. That caught me off guard. You don't owe me an apology. You weren't even there." "I know, but..." He trailed off, then sighed. "I should have been more involved. Maybe if I had been, Rachel wouldn't have dumped them on you all the time." I didn't know what to say to that. For so long, I'd been angry at everyone connected to my family, but Mark was right. He hadn't been part of the problem. And neither had the kids. "How are they doing?" I asked, nodding toward Jake and Sophie, who were now examining a display of cookies. "Better," Mark said. "I got full custody. I've always paid child support, but Rachel never let me be involved much beyond that. Now, I'm actually getting to be a dad." I felt a pang of something, not quite regret, but maybe a sense of missed opportunity. "That's good. They seem happy." "They miss you," Mark admitted. "They've asked about you a few times." That hit me harder than I expected. I looked at the kids again, and for a moment, I remembered the good times. Reading stories to Sophie before her nap. Teaching Jake how to play his first video game. Those moments before Rachel started taking advantage. "Listen," Mark said, interrupting my thoughts. "I know this is weird, but would you want to maybe see them sometimes? Not as a babysitter," he quickly added, seeing my expression. "Just as their uncle. If you want to." I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to get pulled back into family drama. But looking at Jake and Sophie, I realized they weren't part of that drama. They were just kids who loved their uncle. "Maybe," I said finally. "I'd have to think about it." Mark nodded, understanding. "Fair enough. No pressure." He pulled out his phone. "Here's my number. If you decide you want to see them, give me a call. We can work something out." After we parted ways, I found myself thinking about them more and more. The anger I felt toward my family was still there, but it was starting to take up less space in my life. I was moving forward, focusing on my career, making new friends, even dating a bit. About a month later, I decided to call Mark. We arranged for me to meet them at the park that weekend. Just a casual playdate, no pressure. When I showed up, Jake and Sophie were ecstatic. We played on the swings, fed the ducks, and got ice cream. It was nice. As the months passed, these meetups became a regular thing. Once a month turned into twice a month, and sometimes I'd join them for dinner. Mark and I, surprisingly, got along well. He was nothing like Rachel or my parents. He was honest, respectful of boundaries, and never asked me for anything. One day, while the kids were playing at the park, Mark mentioned that he'd heard from Rachel. She was still struggling, bouncing between temp jobs and living with our parents. She'd been asking to see the kids more, but Mark was hesitant. "She seems desperate," he said. "But I don't know if it's because she actually misses them or if she's just lonely now that everyone's abandoned her." I shrugged. "Not everyone. She has our parents." Mark gave me a look. "Yeah, About that. I don't know if you've heard, but your dad had a health scare. Heart attack. I hadn't heard. No one had called me. I was surprised by the twinge of worry I felt. Is he okay? He's stable, from what Rachel said. But apparently, it's put a lot of stress on your mom. She's working 2 jobs now. I processed this information silently. Part of me felt guilty, like I should reach out. But then I remembered how they had treated me, how quickly they had turned on me when I wouldn't be used anymore. The guilt faded. That's tough, I said finally. But they made their choices. Mark nodded, not pushing it. That was one thing I appreciated about him. He never tried to make me feel bad about keeping my distance from my family. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized my mom's handwriting immediately. I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a short note: "We miss you. We were wrong. If you ever want to talk, here's our new number." I stared at it for a long time. Then I put it in my desk drawer and tried to forget about it. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Had they really changed? Or was this just another attempt to get money out of me now that my dad was sick? I decided to call Mark. He had become something of a neutral party, someone I could talk to about my family without feeling judged. They could be sincere, he said after I told him about the letter. Or they could be desperate. Either way, you don't owe them anything. I know, I said. But part of me wonders if I should at least hear them out. Only if you want to, Mark advised. And only if you set clear boundaries. I thought about it for another week before I finally decided to send my mom a text. Not calling, not visiting, just a text: "I got your letter. I'm not ready to talk yet. But I'm glad Dad is recovering." Her response came almost immediately: "Thank you for responding. We understand. We're here when you're ready." It was simple, respectful of my boundaries. Not at all what I had expected. Had they really changed? Or was this just another manipulation tactic? I didn't know, and I wasn't sure I wanted to find out. For now, I was content with my life. I had my job, my new apartment, and surprisingly, a growing relationship with my niece and nephew. It wasn't the family I was born into, but maybe it was the family I was meant to have. As for my parents and Rachel, only time would tell if they had truly learned their lesson. But one thing was certain: I would never let anyone take advantage of me again. I had found my voice, my boundaries, and my strength. And no matter what happened with my family in the future, I would hold on to those things tightly. Because sometimes, the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't making others suffer, it's living well without them. In the end, that's exactly what I did. I lived well. I thrived. And I found peace in the knowledge that I had stood up for myself when it mattered most. 6 months turned into a year, and I still hadn't seen my parents or Rachel face to face. The occasional text from my mom had become a monthly check-in, brief and respectful. She'd update me on my dad's health, which was slowly improving, and mention mundane things like the weather or a new recipe she tried. Never once did she ask for money or help, which surprised me. Rachel, on the other hand, had tried to reach out through social media. I blocked her immediately. I wasn't ready for that, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. My relationship with Jake and Sophie continued to grow. I'd take them to movies, help Jake with his math homework, and teach Sophie how to play the simple video games I'd enjoyed as a kid. They were thriving with Mark, who had turned out to be an excellent father when given the chance. One weekend, while dropping the kids off after a day at the zoo, Mark invited me in for a beer. We sat on his small balcony, watching the sunset, when he mentioned something that caught me off guard. "Rachel asked about you again," he said, taking a sip of his beer. "She wants to know if you'd be willing to talk to her." I tensed. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That it's not my place to get involved." I nodded, grateful. "Thanks for that." Mark hesitated, then continued, "She's different now, you know. The whole situation. It hit her hard. She lost everything, her job, her kids, her reputation. It was a wake-up call." "Good for her," I said, not hiding the sarcasm in my voice. Mark sighed. "Look, I'm not saying you should forgive her. Hell, I haven't fully forgiven her either for how she treated the kids. But people can change when they hit rock bottom. Your sister. She hit it hard." I didn't respond, just stared at the horizon as the sun dipped below it. Could people really change that fundamentally? Could Rachel, who had been selfish and entitled her entire life, suddenly become self-aware? "What about my parents?" I asked finally. "Have they changed too?" Mark shrugged. "I don't see them much, just when they come for supervised visits with the kids. They seem humbler. Your dad's health scare shook them both. And losing the house, having to downsize, relying on others' charity. It's not easy for proud people." I knew that all too well. My parents had always been proud, especially my mom. The thought of her asking her church for help, of my dad selling his prized possessions, it should have given me satisfaction. Instead, I felt a complicated mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. "Just think about it," Mark said, finishing his beer. "Not for them, but for you. Sometimes holding on to anger is heavier than letting it go." His words stayed with me in the days that followed. Was I holding on to anger? Yes, absolutely. Did they deserve my forgiveness? I wasn't sure. But Mark was right about one thing: the anger was heavy. It colored everything, even my happiest moments with the kids. A week later, I received an unexpected email from my old manager. My company was expanding, opening a new office in another state, and they wanted me to head up the IT department there. It was a massive promotion, a chance to build something from the ground up. The catch? I'd have to move across the country. My first instinct was to say yes immediately. A fresh start, away from all the family drama, with a bigger paycheck and more responsibility. But then I thought about Jake and Sophie. About the bond we'd rebuilt. About leaving them behind. I met with Mark to discuss it. He was supportive, as always. The kids will miss you, he said honestly. But we can make it work. Video calls, visits during school breaks. This is a huge opportunity for you. He was right, of course. But something still held me back. I realized I needed closure before I could move forward with such a big life change. So, after much deliberation, I texted my mom, "I'm in town next Saturday. Can we meet for coffee?" Her response was immediate: "Yes. Name the place and time." We met at a small cafe downtown, neutral territory. When she walked in, I was shocked by how much she had aged in just over a year. Her hair had more gray, her face more lines. She hesitated when she saw me, as if unsure whether to hug me or keep her distance. I made the decision for her by standing and offering a handshake. Relief and disappointment flickered across her face as she took my hand. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as we sat down. "It means a lot." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak yet. We ordered our coffees, and an awkward silence fell over us. Finally, she cleared her throat. "How are you? You look good." "I'm fine," I said. "Work is going well. I might be moving soon, actually. Job promotion." Her eyes widened slightly. "That's wonderful. You always were so smart with computers." She hesitated. "Is that why you wanted to meet? To tell us you're moving?" I took a deep breath. "Partly. But mostly. I needed to know if anything's really changed. If you and Dad and Rachel have actually learned anything from what happened." My mom's hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around her coffee mug. "We have," she said softly. "The hard way." She looked up at me, her eyes brimming with tears. "I'm sorry. We all are. What we did to you was wrong. You were helping us, and we treated you like an obligation instead of a blessing." The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. "It wasn't just about the babysitting," I said. "It was years of favoritism, of treating me like I was less than Rachel. Then expecting me to bail everyone out and still treat me like I was the burden." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I know. And I can't change the past. I wish I could." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "Your father and I have been saving. It's not much, but it's a start toward paying you back for everything you did for us." I stared at the envelope but didn't take it. "I don't want your money." "What do you want, then?" she asked, her voice small. "Tell me, and if it's in my power, I'll do it." What did I want? Validation? An apology? For them to suffer as I had suffered? I had all those things already. No, what I wanted was something simpler. "I want respect," I said finally. "I want to be treated like an adult who makes his own choices. I want acknowledgement that what you all did was wrong, not just inconvenient or unfortunate, but wrong." My mom nodded slowly. "Yes. It was wrong. All of it. We took advantage of your kindness, and when you stood up for yourself, we tried to punish you for it." She met my gaze steadily. "I am deeply, truly sorry." We talked for hours after that. She told me about my dad's recovery, about how they were managing in their small apartment. About how Rachel was working 2 jobs now, trying to get her life together so she could have the kids back more often. About how they'd all been going to family counseling. By the time we parted ways, I felt lighter somehow. Not completely healed, that would take time, but lighter. I didn't promise to visit or to call regularly, but I did take her number and said I'd think about keeping in touch. "And the job?" she asked as we stood to leave. "Will you take it?" I smiled, my first genuine smile directed at her in over a year. "I think I will. A fresh start might be good for everyone." 3 weeks later, I was packing up my apartment when my phone rang. It was Rachel. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "I hear you're moving," she said without preamble. "Mom told me." "Yeah," I confirmed. "Next week." There was a pause, then, "I'm sorry. For everything. I was awful to you." It wasn't eloquent or lengthy, but it was direct. No excuses, no justifications. Just an acknowledgement of what she had done. "Yes, you were," I agreed. "I know you probably hate me," she continued. "I would hate me too. But I'm working on being better. For the kids, mostly. But also for me." "That's good," I said, and meant it. The kids deserve better. Another pause. "Before you go, could we maybe see each other? Just once? I'd like to apologize in person." I considered it. Part of me still wanted to say no, to hold on to the anger that had fueled me for so long. But another part, a growing part, Was tired of carrying that weight. One coffee, I agreed. That's it. We met the next day, and it was awkward and painful and necessary. Rachel cried, which I hadn't expected. She had always been so composed, so confident in her rightness. Seeing her vulnerable was strange. She apologized for taking advantage of me, for the harassment after I moved out, for trying to sabotage my job. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just for a chance to make amends. I didn't promise anything beyond listening. But as I drove away, I realized the anger that had been my constant companion for over a year had dulled to something more manageable. It would never disappear completely, some betrayals cut too deep for that, but it no longer controlled me. The day before my move, I visited Jake and Sophie one last time. We had a picnic in the park, played their favorite games, and I gave them each a tablet so we could video chat regularly. As I was saying goodbye, Jake hugged me tightly and whispered, "Mom says she's sorry she was mean to you." I pulled back, surprised. "Did she?" He nodded solemnly. "She cries sometimes when she thinks I'm not looking. She misses you." I ruffled his hair, not sure what to say. "It's complicated, buddy. But I'll always be your uncle, no matter where I live." That night, as I finished packing the last of my belongings, I thought about the journey of the past year and a half. From feeling used and taken for granted, to standing up for myself, to the messy aftermath, and finally, to this moment of uncertain reconciliation. Would I ever fully trust my family again? Probably not. Would I let them back into my life completely? No. But perhaps, from a distance, with clear boundaries and lowered expectations, there could be some kind of relationship. Not what it was before, nothing would ever be as it was before, but something new. Something healthier. As I loaded the last box into my car the next morning, I looked back at the apartment that had been my refuge during the storm. It had served its purpose. Now it was time for the next chapter. I pulled out my phone and sent a group text to my parents and Rachel. "I'm heading out now. New number attached. I'll be in touch when I'm settled." It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly. But it was an opening. A small one, to be sure, but an opening nonetheless. Sometimes, that's all you need to start again.